Because of the size of the treehouse, each side is right around 7 feet wide. My plan is to prefabricate it on the ground and lift the walls up onto the platform. So part of the important thing of building on the ground is making sure everything is square. To do that, I'm making a story stick. Once the story stick fits snugly between each opposing corner, I know the structure is square. Perfect. Square. Perfectly flat platform, meet perfectly flat concrete pad. So you may have noticed so far that all the lumber I've been working with arrived to my house rough sawn. The 2x4s and the structure, those are all rough sawn that I milled and made into the frame. So they're S4S now, they're plain 4 sides, and I rounded over the edges that are on the inside. Also, I've been working on the paneling. The paneling took hours and hours to make, and it's rough sawn on the outside and it's planed on the inside. I didn't stay on the inside, I left it just off the planer. The helical does a pretty good job, so I was fine with that. Feels so good at this point because it's going fast. It's starting to look like a treehouse. I'm just putting boards together. So this was an incredibly satisfying part of the build. And this is in the middle of a 4-day weekend where I pretty much worked on the treehouse for about 36 hours straight. A cool feature of using tongue and groove for an exterior wall that also doubles as an interior wall is that there's very small, if any, air gaps between the panelings. The tongue fits into the groove and that makes a pretty good barrier for air. Also, a big advantage over shiplap, tongue and groove allows you to hide all of your screws. So you'll see on the outside I've attached the screws on the tongue part. And what that does is it screws it in, it keeps it secure, and the next board covers up the screw. So instead of nailing it to the outside like you'd commonly do with an exterior sheathing, I'm screwing it because it is also the interior wall. I don't want these boards popping off at all. And you'll also see later the screws that I'm putting in through the face on the corners will be covered by trim. Speaking of corner trim, here's one of the long 12-foot pieces that I put together. You can see I planed the inside so they're the same thickness, and I'm just running a bead of glue to attach the boards together. Now it did break at the knot, so that's why it looks like there's 2 pieces going on, but that is one continuous piece. Then I'm pinning it with some brad nails, and then lastly, I'm taking a wire wheel to it to scuff off all the glue so it takes stain evenly later. So while the trim pieces were assembled in the garage and pre-finished, I went outside and started working on the walls. Now this is an absolutely horrible experience. The oil I'm using in Sikkens SRD, the stuff I use for the sides, excellent product. It really should be brushed on, but I was crunched for time, so I sprayed it on. Turned out not being the best idea, as I ended up getting this lovely red rash on my face from all the overspray. Thankfully, I wore protective equipment for my lungs and my eyes, so I didn't have any issues there. But it did take about 3 days for the pimples and rash on my face to go away, so I didn't appreciate that very much. The inside was sprayed with a water-based polyurethane. That did not give me any issues. While all the finish dried overnight, I came up with plans to haul the sides up. And the first thing I had to figure out was how to rig everything up. So I was actually up on the platform on a ladder setting up my kids' slack line. I used the slack line as an anchor point, and I set up a snatch block and used that as a winch point. Using 2 ladders, I was able to slide up each wall fairly controlled. A big part of making this work, however, was having help. My dad was up for the weekend. He wanted to see the progress I was making, and he was more than happy to run the winch on the 4-wheeler. My neighbor, perhaps not realizing what I had in mind, also came over to help. So you can see him, my neighbor, and me both on top of the platform, guiding the panels up as they're being winched. Surprisingly, or I would say expectedly, everything went smoothly. All the panels were raised, they were secured, and with plenty of daylight left, I was able to turn my attention to getting the roof on. So overall, it was a plan that really came together. And of course, building the panels on the ground and pre-assembling them square and flat was a big time saver. Otherwise, for each one of those panels, the tongue and groove boards that went up, I would have had to go up and down the ladder. Not to mention, trying to finish it when it's 12 feet off the ground would have been a huge pain. So, overall, saved a lot of time. It was safe, efficient, and best of all, I'm able to move on to the next part of the project.